Hi there. Welcome to the Sober Circle channel. Enjoy this speaker tape.
Hi everyone, my name is Jim Ryan, and I'm an alcoholic. It's glad I am to be here tonight, clear of eye and steady of hand and clean of breath one more day. And red-headed, hell, I stayed out there long enough to drink up my hair. Like you youngsters. I'm glad to be here. I want to take this opportunity of thanking Jerry and his fine committee for inviting me to come over here to Sedona. This is my first trip here, and I don't think I'm going to leave. I want to stay here. What do I do, Joe? Do I stand closer or a little bit? I'm glad to be here. I want to take this opportunity, as I say, to thank the committee for being here. I'm a little nervous. I'm always nervous. I rub my hands together and button and unbutton my coat. I'll be all right in a minute. I reminds me I was speaking one time over in San Diego, and there was one of those psychiatrists in the audience. He came up to me after the meeting and told me why I rubbed my hands together like this, and I slapped the son of a bitch. No way. But I'm telling you, I've never seen such a I was raised in in a place where the highest thing that you could see was a curb. And I've never seen these mountains like this. I think it's just nice. I'm just delighted to be here. And I'm delighted to be here for three reasons. I come to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings for three reasons, and I hope I never forget those reasons. And the first reason is to reinforce my own sobriety. I used to cry like that too, son. That's all right. They always came and got me too. The second reason is to see some old friends that I haven't seen for a while and that I dearly love. Gentleman just came up, Pat Sullivan from Manhattan Beach, and his lovely wife Christine. I hadn't seen them in years, and it just thrilled me to be seeing here with them. And the third reason I'm here is that I like to come here is to see new people, and that has happened today. And the added portion of being a participant in an AA gathering makes it that much more fun, because I'm here to tell you one thing and one thing only. I've never been happier than I am right now in my whole life, right here in Sedona. I've never had more going for me right now than I've got going for me right now, and things go well for me. And I'm telling you, the only reason I can say things go that well for me is the fact that I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Clear of eye and steady of hand and clean of breath one more day. And it's just neat. And I got to tell you that the reason I'm here as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I sat out in audiences just like that and heard people say those things from podium and lecterns up and down the state of California and out into Arizona, and I heard them say how good things were going for them, and I bit my lips and clenched my teeth and said, yeah, that's the way I want to feel too, but how in the hell do you get to feeling that good? Well, I am here to tell you tonight exactly how I got to feeling that good. And I'm going to tell you in one word how I got to feeling that good. Surrender. Just give up, dummy. You're not going anywhere. You're already there. Hot damn, get it on. All right. The word surrender and the fact that I've been able to surrender has made everything in my life as great as it is today and tonight. And if I could expand on that word surrender and the act of surrender, I wish I could at length. But just let me suffice to say that everybody had to surrender just like I did when they came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I had to surrender those old ideas that I could drink like a gentleman and I could drink any time I wanted to with impunity. I had to surrender those ideas. And over the years, as I've been able to make deeper and more gut-level surrenders, the better my life has gotten. And the easiest way I know to surrender, to make these effective surrenders, is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have been able to surrender over these years through the help of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and God as I understand God and you people in in AA to the point that I've never had it so good as I've got it tonight, standing right here in Sedona. Let me tell you about one of those surrenders. A couple of years ago, God asked me to slow down. He gave me a heart attack is what he did. And after some lovely nurses in the San Gabriel Community Hospital brought me back to life, and the people in Alcoholics Anonymous, and some of them are here tonight, actually loved me back to life, I was turned over to another hospital with a very great cardiac specialist and a fine team of surgeons, and after a series of tests, they decided that I needed open heart surgery. And I felt one of these surrenders coming on because I did not like to be cut upon. But when those 5 steely-eyed surgeons surrounded my bed one night, they had X-ray pictures of my heart, what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like now. They told me what they were going to do to me the next day with a skill saw going up my chest and cracking it open like an egg and taking veins out of my leg and putting my heart. I had to surrender. The reason I had to surrender, I'd never seen one of those 5 surgeons at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And I don't turn my life over to people unless I've seen them on a regular basis at AA meetings. I started to line them all up and say, when did you have your last drink or sedating pill, doctor? Then I was afraid they might tell me. Did you take a morning drink today, sir? They did a fine job, and I'm healthier right now than I've ever been before in my life. And things go well for me. Things go well for me. I do not speak for Alcoholics Anonymous. I am simply one member who has been invited to come here and tell you in a general way some of the things that happened to me to get me to Alcoholics Anonymous, some of the things that are happening in my life today. And if you're new or if there's anything shaky in your life tonight, do not look for the differences, please. Just remember that we are all here as members of Alcoholics Anonymous, in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and listen with an open mind, because my problem that got me to Alcoholics Anonymous might not be your problem. Because all of these good feelings that I have tonight were not always a part of my life, I can guarantee you. I was born the youngest of 8 children to a fine Irish Catholic family in the sovereign state of Texas, and I hit bottom right there. And you talk to a Bible-busting Baptist preacher in southern Oklahoma, and he'll tell you up front that the man with those kind of character defects going to die in the hands of the devil drunk. But that didn't get me to Alcoholics Anonymous, though. I was raised in a very competitive family down on the Texas-Mexican border during the Depression. And my parents had very little of the material things to give us. They never owned an automobile. They never owned a home. But they did instill in all of us a devotion to our God and to our church and to our country, and the idea of furthering our formal education. And that they were pretty good. But I didn't like my environment. I didn't like being the youngest of a big Irish family where I was spoiled rotten by one half of the family, beat the hell out of by the other half. And then big people would change sides during the night. I never knew where I stood. But I knew they learned how to live in school, didn't they? So I learned how to read and write when I went over to the schoolhouse that first day, and I learned my first big lesson. I was the only one in that whole school that could even laugh in English. And I didn't know how to laugh in Spanish. Even the nuns called me a gringo. They would start talking about Texas history, and somebody say, remember the Alamo, and everybody jump up and beat the hell out of me. Hell, we won that one, did we? Not today, muchacho. Boom, you know. So I just withdrew. You know, the feelings of rejection and the feeling of being apart from, and even whether I was rejected or not, those feelings of being rejected and apart from settled in my young life and held true for me for many years. So I just sat by the edge of the road and said, they learned how to live, maybe somebody will teach me how to live. Then something wonderful happened to me when I was about 10 years old. My father got promoted, and we moved up to the big city of Dallas. And everything got real good for a while. It set up a pattern in my life that held true for many years. Every time I made a major geographical change, everything in my life got real good for a while. We moved into a big, beautiful school system, nice neighborhood, and people who were always nice around me. And I thought it would never end. And then I ran into my roadblocks. And the first roadblocks I ran into in my young life were scholarships. My brothers and sisters were the smartest people that ever came down the pike in that part of Texas. They made straight A's without seeming to try. They broke scholastic records. They got out of high school when they were 15, out of college when they were 18, got law degrees when they were 21 years old, and went on to become substantial citizens. And I wasn't like that. I wasn't dumb. Yeah, I was pretty dumb. But I noticed the attention that my brothers and sisters were getting, and even at an early age, I needed to be noticed, and I wanted to be patted on the back and applauded like they were being applauded. And so I started doing other things. At the age of 13, I was a tournament champion, contract bridge player. And I'm telling you, I don't know what... I've never seen boobs like that in my life. Man, he turned on. Isn't he hot? Damn, get it on. Told you I was weird, didn't I? At the age of 13, I was a tournament champion, contract bridge player. And in my life at that time, took on a series of peaks and valleys, and every time I would do something outstanding, I would be noticed and applauded, and everything would go well for me, but I wouldn't stay up there too long because you'd get to know me too well, and you might not like me, so I would withdraw. And I got to be a champion swimmer, but I wouldn't go to the out-of-state meets, because I had these feelings of insecurity and deep-seated feelings of nothingness inside. I had to hide them with a big facade. I got to be a captain of a high school basketball team, one of the best in the state of Texas that year. But I knew inside that if you really knew what I was like, you wouldn't want me to be on that team, much less be captain of it. If you really knew what I thought about you and what I thought what would be best for you, you wouldn't like me to be around. So I always held back. I used to love to hear those people down in Texas, though, say things like, "Man, if that Jimmy Ryan ever goes full bore, he's going to be a world beater. Ain't he hot? Damn, get it on." I didn't know what they wanted me to do. They nearly potentialed me to death. I said, "What do you want me to do?" "Go full bore, boy. Hot damn, get it on." But I knew if I went full bore and still didn't measure up to being the champion that they expected me to be, I'd be exposed as a nothing. And I couldn't stand to be exposed as a nothing, so I always held back. I needed something in reserve at all times. I got out of high school and floundered, and I didn't know what to do. But I was one of these kids that desperately wanted to please his parents. My parents were the type of people that built this country, and I loved and respected them, and I wanted to do the right thing and please them. And I felt I wasn't pleasing them because I didn't make the good grades like the other 7 children were doing. And I probably pleased my parents in many ways. I don't know if you know anything about the old country devout Irish, especially those with a large family, but there's one way you can please them. And that's for one or more of their children to join the religious life as either a priest or a nun. And no one in my family had ever tried that. So I left Dallas and went up to the University of Notre Dame and entered the Holy Cross Seminary to study for the Catholic priesthood. And God, I loved that place. That big university and the ivy-covered walls of that seminary, the close discipline and the silence and the religiosity, and I knew I could stay there and become a happy man. Those poor priests had never seen anything quite like me. A bunch of Yankees didn't understand the way I talked, I guess. One priest took me aside and said he'd never seen a seminarian come up there with a crooked pair of dice and a marked deck of cards and his own breakdown pool cue. I was going to hustle them out of something, I know. But they liked me and they let me stay, and I liked them and I wanted to stay. And I can say in all sincerity tonight, right here in Sedona, Arizona, that if I'd been able to stay there and do what those good priests asked me to do in the way they asked me to do it, I could have stayed there and become a happy man. But one morning I woke up and I said, "For God's sake, here I am in an angel factory, and I'm still not happy." And so I split. And man, did I split. World War II just getting good started about that time. From the sheltering walls of that Catholic seminary, I ran to the sheltering arms of the United States Marine Corps. Now, they've got a program, I'll tell you. Hot damn, get it on. Yeah. But I was 6 feet 1, weighed 195 pounds, and very patriotic, and I ran down to San Diego, California, and signed up for a 4-year hitch in the Marine Corps. And I dug the Marine Corps. I still dig the Marine Corps. I was going down to San Diego when I met Donna and Neil down in San Diego. We were down there at a convention not too long ago. I held a salute for 10 miles past Camp Pendleton just in case one of them was watching, you know. It's hard to be humble when you're the very best. Yeah, damn. The Marine Corps had never seen anything quite like me. They're coming out of that seminary and into the Marine Corps. The only 4-letter words I knew were Lord and Amen. I learned 3 more the first week. I couldn't work those first ones into a conversation around the barracks. But that boot camp discipline was nothing compared to what I was used to in the seminary. I knew how to keep my mouth shut, my eyes and ears open, calling them drill instructors Father. You call me Father one more time, lad, and they'll be carrying you over to sick bay to have my boot cut out of your ass. Every morning, there he goes again, must call one of them Father. But I scored very high in the classification test, and when I got out of boot camp, they made me what they called a junior drill instructor on the grinder, where they grind up people and turned them into Marines. And overnight, I had a complete personality change. I had no rank, but I had that much authority, and I got meaner than a Skid Row tomcat. I used to sleep with one eye open just to keep from cutting my own throat, you know. I had one of these real fancy rifle inspections, and I learned how to roll that cadence like a tobacco auctioneer, and when I told those lads to knock off that bobbin and leave it in the left-hand file, or I'd walk amongst them, either they did or I did, because I thought that's what the Marine Corps wanted, and I wanted to be a good Marine. That'll put you a cut above the rest of them, won't it? Hot damn, get it on. Yeah. All of my life I was taught to be a cut above, and I never felt that I was. But I was always had to be feeling that I was a cut above. And I guess I was a good Marine at that point in time because they gave me a chance to go to officers' candidate school in Quantico, Virginia, and I thought I had the world by the tail with a downhill drag. Man, to be a Marine Corps officer during a popular war was the greatest thing that could ever happen to a poor boy from Texas. And I got over to Quantico and just breezed through there. And I was next to the youngest man that got commissioned that season. I was barely 20 years old when I was made an officer and gentleman by act of Congress. And in all that time, I had never done any drinking. My mother hated the drink like the devil hates holy water. She wouldn't allow it in the house. She wouldn't allow it anybody around her to drink. And being raised as an athlete in that Bible Belt area of Texas, it wasn't a part of my life. My father used to say, your mother considers there's only 2 kinds of persons, a drinker and a gentleman. If you were a gentleman, you went to Mass on Sunday and said your prayers and supported your family. But if you were a drinker, you were just like a banana, because you're born green, turned yellow, and died rotten. Man, I don't eat banana splits to this day. But we argued. I had that tailor-made uniform on and them gold bars gleaming, and 400 of us went into a big hotel in downtown Washington, D.C. to celebrate with a big party that we'd been made officers. And a buddy of mine from Arkansas walked in. This is what? I'm getting some feedback back here. He said, this is it, and I just wanted to watch. Hot damn, get it on. I've always been looking for it. Your buddy of mine from Arkansas hit me in the side and said, what are you going to have to drink? And I said, I don't know. I didn't want to show him how dumb I was by ordering a Scotch souffle or a bourbon frappy or something. I didn't even know what to order. And he said, I'll bring you something. And he brought me a Singapore Sling. Oh, that thing, it was a hot August night in Washington, D.C. That thing went down so sweet and so smooth. And it warmed me up. And all of a sudden I could talk. And I could come out of the corner and dance with those little Yankee girls and socialize. And he brought me another one. And it went down gooder. Sparkled my eyes, you know. Yeah, you know. Hot damn, get it off. Yeah. I went back and got the third one. I must have drunk a number 2 wash tub of those things that night. The next day, everybody's patting me on the back saying, Ryan, you were the life of the party. And I said, give me a for instance, what happened? And they were talking about all these hilarious things that came up that night, and I was a big part of them. And I was just sitting there just having a good time listening to it. Then a guy came up to me and he said, hey, what happened last night? Even though you walked in there stag, you walked out with the prettiest girl that came to the party. And I thought, liquor had done it. Because I was the type of guy that couldn't pick up a pretty girl in a woman's prison with a pocket full of pardons, man. I don't know if they laugh at me or identify with me. But you know, looking back on that first bout with alcohol, I started drinking the same way everybody I've ever known started drinking. I was in a social situation. The drink was offered. I didn't want to feel apart from the people of the party, so I took the drink. Well, I can't tell you much about the rest of those 400 people that came to that party that night, but I can tell you this for me. For the next 25 years, every time I walked into a party that served alcohol, anytime I walked into a liquor store, or anytime I walked into a bar, I was the type of drinker that always wanted one more drink. I never had enough. I drank like a pig, and I never had enough. I drank till it ran out of my ears, and I always wanted more. Don't let the party end. Don't let the bartender shut down the shop. Even drag me out from underneath the table where I'd gone to rest the bod for a while, but let's have one more for the ditch, man, or one more for the road. Never wanted the party to end. Many years later, I used to hate to see those bars closed and everybody leave. I'd have to go home. My wife would say, what do you mean come home this time of night? The only place open, dummy. Hell, if they were still serving, I'd still be out there, man. I never wanted to go home. Hell. That was many years later, though. Got out of Quantico and came back to the West Coast and shipped overseas and joined the hardest drinking regiment in the United States Marine Corps, the 22nd Marines. I say it was the hardest drinking regiment for a number of reasons. We ran out of food every once in a while, but we never ran out of whiskey. The only survivors of that regiment that I've ever met have been members of Alcoholics Anonymous. But you got to remember, this was a big part of my young life in my drinking career, because the 22nd Marines was a rifle regiment that the Marine Corps specialized in World War II, the assault rifle regiment. And all of the officers in my battalion were older than I was, bigger than I was, meaner than I was, and braver than I was, and I was a very frightened young man. But I had to have that image of being a Marine Corps line officer in a combat assault rifle regiment, and that image damn near killed me. Japanese took a pretty good shot at me too, but that image damn near killed me. Because the rifle regiment that I was in, we got cut to pieces in those operations. We'd just go into these islands and you'd get practically wiped out. And I'd lose most of my men and most of my friends. And we'd withdraw, regroup, get retrained, and coming back in again, just get wiped out again. And it got to me emotionally to the point that the only way I could cope with that kind of death and destruction was learn how to drink alcohol. And I learned how to drink alcohol overseas in the Marine Corps. I learned to like alcohol overseas in the Marine Corps. And I got hooked on alcohol overseas. And I was a washed-out, drunken old man at the age of 22 years old, hooked on alcohol and didn't even know it. It got me to the point that I didn't even care whether I wanted to live or not. But I got blown up on Okinawa, the last island I was in, and I got sent home the only way we could come home with multiple Purple Hearts, and I was back in the States in the hospital when the war ended. And I had no thought of staying in the Marine Corps anymore. I'd been offered a regular commission, but I couldn't pass the physicals anymore, and I had no thought of continuing my vocation to the priesthood, and so my family insisted to go back to college and finish there like they had done. And I went back to Dallas to Southern Methodist University back there, and everything got real good for a while. And I am telling you, I had to go through an era for a number of years in my life that so many people in Alcoholics Anonymous have had to go through. That era of honest self-deception, that so long as we're young enough and healthy enough, so long as those outside conditions are going pretty well for us, what difference does it make if we get a little drunk every once in a while? I got to be a big man on that campus. I was a campus favorite. I was president of my college fraternity, president of the Interfraternity Council, and assistant to the dean of students. One of my best friends in the Marine Corps, his father was a senior senator from New Mexico at the time. And I had saved his life, and he'd saved my life, so that made us compadres, you know, and we were good friends. And through some connections with him and his family, and through connections with my family, I got hooked in politics on a state and a national level. And I was going all over the country raising political campaign funds for people that one of them later became president of the United States. But I was one of these guys that come into a city and set up these meetings and entertain royally and get their campaign contributions, and then I would split. And I wouldn't even consider coming back to that city for a long time without another candidate. And I didn't even remember the trails that I left. You know, I was guilty of some very tacky behavior at this point in my life. I puked on a lot of prominent people in my day, I'll tell you. People in Texas knew enough to stay away from me, but I could get you 30 feet away and around the corner if I wanted to. And I got hooked in a very big social situation in Dallas. I lived in the right part of Dallas, and it didn't make any difference when we were in grade school and high school, but when we grew up, my best friends came from some of the richest families in the world down there. And I was always included in their big soirees and their debutante balls and their big Christmas parties. And then we grew up and started going on these running drunks. Acapulco and the Cuban, Banff and Lake Louise and Colorado Springs. And I was always included in, but I had these feelings of inadequacy because I didn't have that kind of money. So I split again. I went down to Houston where my brothers were all established lawyers. And there again I didn't do much drinking because it was a new area for me. I didn't have much money. I was starting a business career. They didn't have bars like we know them out here this way in those days. They had beer joints, and I didn't like to go into those because I didn't like the way Texans drank. Man, if you don't go in there on a Friday night and lose 2/3 of your paycheck and get your nose bashed in and knuckle bumps all over your head, you haven't had a good time. But my hot damn, get it on you. And I always loved to talk low. I'd sit around and talk that trash and drink that mash, spend that cash. Never did smoke any hash. But the thing, I just wanted things to go smoothly in a bar. I'd punch people out to keep them from getting in a fight. You know, sit down, I want to talk to you. We could all just sit there and just drink and have a good time and discuss things. And I was an expert on everything from numerology to nookie, but I never argued about nothing, you know. And I think they got a lot of numerologists here in Sedona. More per capita than I've ever run into. Met a beautiful young lady down there in Houston who got married. Things were going fine. We bought our first home, started playing that Vatican roulette real good, and them children started coming along. Not all Protestants either, are they? Hot damn, get it up. Things were going fine, and then I got into a business deal that wasn't too good, and a buddy of mine was coming out to the West Coast to start up a new business. And he said, Jim, we're both good salesmen. Come on out there with me. We can start this business and make a good living. His name was Bill Wilson. You got to follow a guy with a name like that, don't you? So I sold my home in Texas and took 2 babies and a plumb pregnant wife across that Cajon Pass. Had 2 mattresses on top of my station wagon, so you know I was a rich Texan. Somebody told me when I got out to California the best thing that ever came out of Texas was Route 66, and you took it. Heard another lady at a Roundup say one time that Texas was the only state mentioned in the big book, the state of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Isn't that horrible? Probably some tacky Yankee. I got out to California and we started this new business with a little tube fitting used primarily in process instrumentation with refineries and chemical plants and power plants and instrument manufacturing and things like that. We were hard-working, good salesmen, and it was right at the right time there in California, and we started prospering a little. And we didn't do much drinking because we had young families to raise, and it was a new area for us, and we started doing pretty well. And then I took the chief project engineer to Lockheed Aircraft Corporation out to lunch one day. He was instrumental in getting me a lot of business if I could get him to put my tube fitting on his new airplane that they were going to build. And I wanted to be nice to him, and he was a nice guy, and he wanted to go to his favorite watering spot called the Smokehouse in Burbank. Ah, damn Burbank, downtown Burbank, hot damn. And I walked into that place and took one look around, and I said, hot damn, get it on. It did like downtown Dallas, yes. And he said, Jim, before we start talking any business, let's have a specialty of the house. And the specialty of the house that day was a deep dish martini. And I could have done the backstroke across the lip of that glass for 5 minutes and never touched the other side. And we started drinking those things, and he ended up, into the night, he ended up giving me an order for $55,000 worth of tube fittings. And I was on a 10% commission. It was the first time I'd ever made $5,500 in one day in my life, and I thought liquor had done it. And that opened up a whole new area for me. I'd always known that liquor was a social necessity, but now it became a business asset. And I'm telling you, I said, this is what they didn't teach me in that town college in Texas. You get them drunk, and then you get their money. Hot damn, get it on, yeah. And I'm telling you, the more money I poured into whiskey and down my customers' throats and drank right along with them, and I had a good capacity in those days for drinking, the more money I made. And I thought, man, this is the answer. And these long business luncheons, these technical society hoedowns in these conventions, man, I slang. My wife didn't like it much when I'd come home sloshed to the eyeballs, and she'd look at me, and I'd look at her, and she'd look at me, and I'd say, springtime, out there in that jungle where I'm fighting for a living for you and the kids, that's the way I have to play the game, because that's the way they play the game, and I enjoyed every damn minute of it, I'll tell you. Yeah, I've seen people come to Alcoholics Anonymous I don't understand. Sometimes they come in here and they don't like some of the things about alcohol. They didn't like the way it tasted. They didn't like the way it smelled. It made them dizzy on top of the head. I'm different. I liked everything about it. I liked the way it was packaged, the way it was labeled, the way it was served, the way it smelled, the way it tasted, the way it felt, going down, coming up. Didn't make any difference to me, man. I would have bathed in that stuff if I could have. As a matter of fact, no, I ain't going to talk about that tonight. No. That moon is too full. Hot damn. And I got so good at that business, there's only one thing that they could do, and that was give me my own distributorship. And then I knew I had the world by the tail with a downhill drag. That great American dream. President of your own corporation. That'll put you a cut above the rest of them, won't it? Hot damn, did it, huh? Yeah. I knew how to sell that fitting, how to train people to sell it and where to sell it, and they gave me the best industrial complex in the world, the 6 counties in and around Chicago, Illinois. And I went back there and hired good people, and that distributorship took off like a rocket. And I am telling you, things got real good for me, I thought. And then as a friend of mine recently said, I had to learn that inevitable truth, the high cost of low living. I hired these good people, and for all practical purposes, I quit working. I bought a beautiful black overcoat with a velvet collar and a black Homburg hat and set out with the idea of assaulting the city of Chicago. You better have more than a hat and a coat when you try that, I'll tell you. I don't know if any of y'all have ever been to Chicago, but if your name is anything like Ryan, and your children's names are Kevin, Patrick, and Colleen,
and you studied for the priesthood at Notre Dame, man, every Southside Irish saloon from 55th Street to 95th Street, from Wentworth Avenue to Western Avenue is yours if you had the money, and I had the money. Damn, get it on. It wasn't my money, but I was el numero uno in my company, and I wrote the checks. And I took care of little Jimmy real good. And for all practical purposes, I quit working. And my destructive drinking started. All of my drinking life, I felt that I'd always been held down by family pressures, job pressures, and money pressures from the way I always wanted to drink. But when I had all of these things going for me, nobody to answer to, the head honcho, and money, my destructive drinking started. And I can't tell you how much I drank. Sometimes I could drink a lot. Sometimes I couldn't drink very much. But the complete inability to stop into a saloon, take 2 drinks, make 2 bets, tell 2 jokes, and go home to my family completely escaped me until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and found out about the phenomenon of craving that sets up in an alcoholic body like mine, that one drink demands a drink, demands a drink, demands a drink. With the best of intentions, I'd walk into Halligan's Saloon and order and drink 2 drinks and walk out of there to go home, right into Terry Slattery's saloon, right into Barney O'Donovan's saloon, and I came home drunk. And I never wanted to go home drunk once in my life. Never wanted to go home drunk once. And yet I couldn't, just night after night after night, I'd come home drunk. I remember, I don't know how much I drank. I really can't. I was sitting in Halligan's Saloon at 69th and Racine one time. One character said, how much is somebody's drink? He's in here all the time. Bartender said, I don't know how much, but when he's here on my full shift, he drinks about a quart of whiskey a day when I'm here. I don't know what a quart of whiskey a day did for y'all. It did wonders for me, but it wrecked hell out of my marriage. Because they'd never seen anything quite like me in Chicago either. They had never heard the Rose of Tralee sung in a Texas accent, you know. What's he singing? Don't bother him. He's buying, you know. And yet, night after night, I'd come home drunk. And, you know, by the time I got home, if I got home, the house was dark. The children were in bed. I'd come in, park the car as best I could, depending on how much snow was around, usually right in the middle of the front lawn. Stagger in through the garage and into the kitchen, eat the leftovers out on the sideboard, and go off to bed, and then they started complaining about all the cat food missing around the house. She was a lousy cook, so I just put more ketchup on it, you know. Doesn't taste that bad. Makes you a little horny, but you know. You too? All right, got another cat food eater down here. One morning my wife came into my room from her room. It's suddenly an extra bedroom in the house when you drink like I did. She said, Jim, don't you think it's about time you realize you've become an alcoholic? And I thought this pretty little girl had lost her mind. How could you be an alcoholic if you're president of your own corporation? How could you be an alcoholic if you had one of the finer homes in one of the best western suburbs of Chicago? If my 4-year-old son needed a car, he'd have had one. Anything to cover up those guilt of not coming home except drunk, night after night after night. Fact of the matter was, the police had brought me home the night before and given her the keys to my car and said, don't let this man drive till he sobers up. That might have given this dumb woman an idea that I had a drinking problem. Didn't bother me. I got stopped all the time. Everybody I knew got stopped all the time. I used to carry a $20 bill with my driver's license. Every time I'd get stopped, I'd hand a $20 bill and the driver's license to the policeman. He'd look at the $20 bill, put it in his pocket, look at the driver's license, and said, sure, and it's Mr. Ryan again. What part of Tipperary are you from tonight? Think you've had a little too much to drink. Could we drive you home? They would never arrest me. For a $20 bill, they'd stop at a bar and have a drink with me if I wanted to do, but they would never arrest me. Don't try that in California, sir. they talk real weird out there, I'll guarantee you. Don't point that money at me. And all of a sudden I noticed that my tailor-made clothes didn't fit too good across the shoulders. And I was buying, and I was getting fat was what I was doing. I had to change bars because the peanuts were getting me fat. And there's one bar. My blood pressure was sky high. I had a very ruddy complexion. I was like wine red, you know. And my nerves were starting. I was quick. You know, loud sounds like falling snow and them cats stomping across that high grass, they'd drive me right up the bulkhead. I looked in the phone book and found the doctor. I needed a physical checkup, I thought. And I walked into his office and he took one look at me and said, "Do you use alcohol?" I turned around, walked right back out. I wasn't telling anybody about my drinking. I wasn't even telling me about my drinking. And I've always been a practicing Catholic. And I went to my priest, and I laid out this sad tale of woe about how badly I was being misunderstood. How every time I tried to do something constructive in my life, there was nobody on my side. And I didn't like the way things were going in my life. This poor priest didn't understand the disease alcoholism as we know it in AA, I guess because he'd sit there very wisely and nod. And I'd say, "Father, what do I do?" And he would say, "Pray." I'm here to tell you tonight that I can click them beads in 4 different languages, and I can mea culpa, maxima culpa, myself as I got a busted chest bone. It's not going to do anything about my drinking. If there's anybody in this room and this audience who thinks that I'm speaking about a moral issue when I discuss the disease alcoholism, you're wrong. I am talking about a mental and physical illness that's pharmacological by nature and medically diagnosable. It's a progressive disease that gets worse, never better. And in my personal opinion, it's the #1 killer disease in America today. But if you're an alcoholic like I'm an alcoholic, and you continue to drink, it'll cut you off too short to hang up. I don't know about any of y'all, I just scared the hell out of me. I've seen too many people die. Don't drink. I sold that business for practically nothing, moved back out to the West Coast to try and repair my marriage, and bought a beautiful home in Malibu, over on the coast, coastal community, a very nice area. The morale of my family went up 3,000%. They were out of that ice and snow, and maybe Dad wouldn't find so many Irish saloons out here now. Wrong. Had no trouble getting a good job. I'm well known in my industry, and I'm a good salesman, and things were going fine. I got hooked in the syndrome of being a local leader. I was president of my homeowners association, on the Malibu Chamber of Commerce, and on the Malibu Freeway Committee, represented the whole area in a matter above up in Sacramento for the Freeway Committee, trying to convince them not to build a freeway because the land might slide. They didn't believe us, but they believe us now. They needed a judgeship down on the Pacific Coast Highway, and so we got together and worked a little election up and everything like that. The night before the election, somebody said, "How do you think our man's going to do?" I said, "Hell, we got the votes counted right now, and they're already getting you. We won. The hell, they don't even vote till tomorrow." And I said, "Lyndon Johnson does it this way, and he's president. Let's do it this way." I don't know whether to look up or look down when I talk about him. We won anyhow. They didn't let me do it my way. Things were going fine, and then for some reason, I don't know what happened, but I started drinking again. And the progressiveness of this disease hit me in ways that I had never known before. I started drinking more than I'd ever drunk before, in places that I'd never gone into before, with people that I had never associated with before. Started lying more and cheating more and stealing more in the areas of finances around my family and business. Damn near wiped out my complete capital by making stupid investments while I was drunk. Started changing jobs. Went in with some other people. I was president of a bigger outfit than this. Don't you know how to run things? Went in with some other people In lieu of more money, they gave me a beautiful company car and gasoline credit cards to use in that company car, and unfortunately some of those gasoline credit cards were good in Holiday Inn motels. See, I couldn't come off that high level of living that I had in Chicago. I didn't make that much money anymore, and I'd wasted all of my capital, and I'd forgotten how to work. And so my good credit cards like Diners Club and American Express and Carte Blanche had just been dried up because it took me too long to pay them back. And so I started using my gasoline credit cards to get $5 in cash and $5 in cash and sign the check for $10 and never expect to pay it anyhow, and buy a set of tires from a dealer for $120, sell them back to him for $80 cash before he could even get them off the rack to put on my car, because I needed that money for drinking. Because my wife started making stupid mistakes. She changed banks without telling me and had checks printed up with only her name on it. Every time I walked past the Hard Rock Cafe, my commission check self-destructive. And I didn't know what it was going to do. I didn't know, but I had to do that drinking because I'm an outside salesman. I don't have to report into an office. And so what I used to do, I worked like hell until about 8 or 8:30 in the morning. Then clear myself for the rest of the day with a phone call. They thought I was taking customers to lunch, but I wasn't taking customers to lunch anymore because nobody could drink at lunch with me and still continue to work. My usual lunch consisted of about 9 martinis in a good, well-established bar and restaurant, and then I would drink those and tip well and eat a steak dinner, and then I'd go to a beer joint, and I'd go wherever, and I'd come home drunk, and I never wanted to come home drunk once in my life. And I didn't know how anything else to do except drink. And things got a little bad. My boss never saw me, my family never saw me, my customers never saw me. And if you're a commissioned salesman and your customers never see you, you don't make much money. And I just things were getting bad, and so I decided to do something about it. And I said, Jim, do something about it. And so I said, fine. Moderate your drinking. Doesn't that sound good? Moderate your drinking. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. If I'd been able to moderate my drinking, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. I'd be around downtown moderating my drinking. So I just kept on drinking, and it got to the point that nobody ever saw me except the bartenders and members of my dart teams. They're the only ones that knew where I was going to be. And it got to the point that nobody was speaking to me. My wife would say things like, move your feet and where's the money, but that's about all. And my boss was just getting down desperate to the point he had to do that because I was driving a company car, and I didn't want to, and I had to go to, in California you have to give up your driver's license if you don't take that breathalyzer test. And I knew it would clear me because I wasn't that drunk. I blew up their machine. They said, he doesn't look this drunk, take it again. They blew up their machine. And they booked me on what they call a drunk driving charge, 23103 or 5502 or whatever they call them. And my lawyer and neighbor and friend got me out immediately. He said, never mind, we know the judge. We'll smooth this thing over quickly and quietly, and your wife will never even have to know about it. And the judge is a very good friend of mine. And he moved it to another court just so I wouldn't have to appear in Malibu. And he gave me the minimum fine and no driver's license loss and no jail time because he looked at that police report and that's all he could do. But he said, Jim, don't let me ever see you in here for anything like this again. And I said, Judge, you'll never see me in here for anything. And I split for the nearest bar. You ever sit around a beer joint talking about 502s or drunk driving charges? Everybody's got one, just like a Japanese automobile. But as long as you're pouring those pictures, they'll listen to you tell what a dirty deal you got. Yeah, buy another picture, Jim. We'll tell you about one of ours. If there's anybody in this audience that's ever had a drunk driving charge of 502, 23102A, or whatever they call it in your state, and you continue to drive and continue to drink, I'll give you a written guarantee that you will be stopped again. They're after us. They got a whole team of extras. They go all over the side, just scooping them up, man. In Los Angeles, we get 1,700 drunk drivers a weekend, man. And it'll happen a lot quicker than you think it'll be, and the penalties can become severe. Because I could not stop drinking. I kept on drinking that same way. And 4 months to the day later, I was leaving the Wagon Wheel restaurant in Ventura County. And those red lights turned on behind my car again, and I thought my life was over. I knew what the penalties were for a second offense 502, and everything that I'd worked hard for and built up over my whole life was suddenly going right down the drain. My job, my home, my family, and my freedom. And I begged that highway patrolman not to arrest me for drunk driving. Make it illegal parking. Make it reckless driving. Make it rape, but don't make it drunk driving, man. He said, Mr. Ryan, I have to, and he took me to the High Sheriff of Ventura County's hotel over there, and they took the breathalyzer test. And I don't remember much about it, except this technician leaned out of his cubbyhole and said, "Hey, I think we got somebody beat that fellow in Malibu's record 4 months ago. Put this one on the teletype." They had a contest going up and down the coast in those stations to see who could get the drunkest driver. I won the exacta. And I was sitting there with no money and no... The exacta is I came in first and second, lady. I was sitting, I didn't know what to do. And the judge came through there and asked what the beef was. He'd recognized me from a committee I'd been on, and they told him what the beef was, and he said, "Do you have a lawyer, Mr. Ryan?" I told him my lawyer was on vacation. He wasn't on vacation. He was practically a next-door neighbor and a friend, and he'd bailed me out and paid my fines 4 months ago and hadn't even sent me a bill because he didn't want my wife to know about it, and I hadn't given him a dime in 4 months. I went that money, every money I got together went into paying off bar tabs. And so I told the judge my lawyer was on vacation. He said, "With or without a lawyer, you'll be back up here in 1 week, Mr. Ryan. You're in deep trouble." And I had to ask my wife to come up and get my car out of impound, and she, just the way she walked back to her car without saying a word, I knew she didn't give a damn whether I came back to that house in Malibu or not, but I had no place else to go. By this time, creditors were on my back like you wouldn't believe. They were about to garnish me my wages, and I worked for people that would have fired me on the spot. And I didn't know what to do. And I went downtown to get that man off my back with the credit collection agency, and he wanted money, and I wanted time, and he didn't have any time, and I didn't have any money. And I had to come to that confrontation that every drunk has to come to with somebody that's sober, and they've got the whip hand, and you haven't got a chance as long as you're the drinker. And I walked out of that office as like a whipped dog, and I thought of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't know anything about Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know you had meetings. I didn't know you had clubhouses. I didn't know you had roundups. I knew it was an organization for problem drinkers, and I thought you might be able to teach me how to drink without getting 502s or drunk driving charges. But I knew you were listed in in the phone books. Thank God for central offices. That's the only place I knew to go. And I looked up the address of the central office in downtown Los Angeles, and I drove over there and walked in the office, and a young lady sitting behind the desk said, "May I help you?" And I said, "I want to stop drinking." And she said, "Are you an alcoholic?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't know." I knew what a town drunk was, and I wasn't that. I'd always had a job, and I'd always had a home to go to. But when she said, "Are you an alcoholic?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know." She gave me a list of 20 questions, and I looked at the third one and down at the bottom of the page, and I said, "I suddenly became an alcoholic, ma'am." "What do I do now?" And she said, "We suggest you go to a meeting. Where do you live?" And I told her where I lived. She said, "You're lucky. It's a Tuesday. There's a meeting tonight in a small church in Malibu. It's hard to find, but I've been to that meeting, and I can give you precise directions on how to get there." I said, "Never mind. It's my own parish church. I go to Mass and Communion there at least 4 times a week." They gave me a meeting directory. And we're very fortunate in Los Angeles. We have a lot of meetings. And they gave me a meeting directory and wished me well. And it was about 11:30 in the morning. I noticed they had daytime meetings. So I thought I'd better learn everything about Alcoholics Anonymous before I went to Malibu that night, where everybody was going to be waiting for me. You're who? And I picked one for businessmen called Architects of Adversity. I got over there before anybody got there, and when the secretary got there, I told him that I'd just been over to central office and become an alcoholic. He said, "You're an alcoholic here too, come on in." The Architects of Adversity meetings we have in West Los Angeles are small meetings. They call them fifth step type meetings. You can say anything you want to for as long as you want to, and those people will listen to you. And they're great for newcomers. And everybody knew at that small meeting it was my very first exposure to Alcoholics Anonymous, but I didn't hear anything. They read chapter 5. I didn't hear anything. They went around the table sharing. They probably directed their thoughts to me, and I didn't hear anything. The young lady, I was just sitting there. The young lady leading the meeting, I was the last person. She turned to me, said, "Would you like to say something now?" And I just shook my head. She said, "Are you sure you don't want to say something?" And I just shook my head. Then a man named Chick Parnell leaned across the table and said, "Tell us your name and state your disease. It might be the most important thing you've ever said in your life." And I said, "My name is Jim Ryan, and I'm an alcoholic," and I broke down and cried. I couldn't say my own name for many weeks in Alcoholics Anonymous without crying. I was a shattered man by the time I got to you. But they did pick up on what I did tell them, and they took that meeting directory and underlined 14 meetings a week for me to go to. They said, "You drank during the daytime, you go to these daytime meetings, you be at these nighttime meetings, we're not going to come and get you, but you be there and you be there sober." And I went home that day. My wife had not seen me come home sober in years. And I took that lady aside, and with tears in my eyes, I told her that I was going to Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what she said? "You're not that bad." Trying to explain the disease of alcoholism to a non-alcoholic like that is like trying to explain motherhood to a stud duck at a poultry show, man. They don't know what you're talking about. And I went to Malibu that night, and they turned over the whole meeting to me as a brand new friend of Alcoholics Anonymous, sharing their experience and their strength and their hope. And I got at those very first few meetings, the only thing that I think we can offer a new friend of Alcoholics Anonymous, that is hope. The hope that it can get better provided certain conditions are fulfilled. They said, "Come on in and join us, we understand." I said, "You don't understand. I've been drinking for 25 years. I can't stop drinking like that. Easy does it one day at a time, put the plug in the jug and keep coming back." I said, "That's for you. My boss is going to fire me." Let go and let God. I said, "You don't understand. My wife is going to divorce me. It's hard by the yard, but by the inch it's a cinch." I said, "You don't understand. Goddammit, I'm facing a jail sentence." Then a guy sitting about over where my friend Courtney is stood up and said, "You cannot soar with the eagles in the morning if you hoot with the owls at night." And I threw up all over him. You think about that last minute. There's a lot of people down there in the canyon right now hooting with them owls that ain't going to be soaring with no eagles in the morning, now, is it? We'll get them. Might not be until July 4th, but we'll get them. Hot damn, get it all. AA is going to be here. My boss called me in to fire me. 4 days after I'd come to Alcoholics Anonymous, he called me into his office, and he had 2 checks face down on his desk and a stack of Gulf credit card chits like this. And he said, "Jim, you must be up to your ears in trouble. What the hell's the matter?" I said, "Fred, I've had a drinking problem, and I've joined Alcoholics Anonymous." He tore up the 2 checks that he was going to fire me with. He said, "All right, as long as you're willing to do something about it, I'll go along with you, but you got to pay me back for these." It was $2,418 worth of Gulf credit card chits for 6 weeks of drinking. And he started deducting. And business was bad, and God, he deducted. He deducted. God, he deducted. Oh, God, he deducted. And I thought, as soon as he got it all deducted, he called me in and said he wasn't going to deduct anymore, and I thought the son of a bitch had over-deducted. I work for that same man today. And last month, in first part of May, he sent me to represent his company with all expenses paid for 10 days in Maui, Hawaii, just because he's proud of me. He loves me, and we're good friends, and I'm one of his top salesmen, selling the same product that I couldn't sell 11 years ago to the same customers, and I'm one of their top salesmen. And if you're new, or if there's anything shaky in your job area, just remember that if you go out there every day and give that man a day's work, the rewards will come, so long as we stay sober. That area of my life has never gone better. And I started going to these meetings, but I had that jail sentence hanging over me. And I knew if I could just get out of that, everything would be all right. And I started listening to these clubhouse lawyers. And they said, Jim, stay with us. Don't drink. That judge is not going to, we got connections here in AA. That judge, as long as you're staying sober, don't worry about that judge. And I started believing them, because every time I'd have to go up and see that judge in Ventura County, my lawyer would say, no, never mind. We got more time off. They got me a lawyer through AA, and he said, never mind. Stay sober. We got your time off. And I was 8 months sober before I finally had to, my lawyer called out and said, Mr. Ryan, you have to come up and face this judge. I can't get you any more time. And I got a little edgy. And my sponsor and his sponsor stood me on the steps of the Brentwood meeting over in West Los Angeles. They said, Jim, you've been doing pretty good for 8 months. You haven't had a drink, and you come to a lot of these meetings, but you're getting a little edgy about what that judge is going to say in Ventura County. I said, I dig you loud and clear, sir. He said, let me tell you something. If you really believe that the people in Alcoholics Anonymous are telling you the truth, you really believe that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is for you, you're willing to come to these meetings, try this way of life, no matter what that judge says in Ventura County, everything's going to be all right. And then he told me how his second offense 502 had been dismissed on a technicality because he'd been a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous for 8 months when his time came. And I knew everything was going to be all right. My sponsor took off from work to stand in front of that judge with me. My two best AA friends took off from work just to stand in testimony in front of that judge that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous worked for me and for them. And the penalty did not fit the crime. And we got up there knowing everything was going to be all right. And my lawyer met us outside the courtroom. He said, Mr. Ryan, I'm sorry. In your case, I really wanted to help because you've done a marvelous job of correcting your drinking problem that got you in this trouble. But there's nothing I can do, and I feel very inadequate as a lawyer. I used to work for this district attorney up here, but he won't hear of a reduction in charge, and they won't let me talk to the judge in your behalf. And I said, that's all right. That's all right. And this is all I did. This is all I did. I stood outside that courtroom and I said, God, I'm with you and you're with me. Let's go in and talk to that judge. That dumb son of a bitch sent us both to jail, me and God. Sounds funny now, but it didn't sound funny then, I'll tell you. But you know, everything was all right. Everything that I worried most about when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous either never happened to me, or if it did happen to me, it wasn't that bad. I still had my job, my home, and my family, and going to jail wasn't that bad because they let me do it on a series of weekends so it wouldn't interfere with my work. I'd check in on Friday night, and they'd let me out on Sunday night, and the jailer would say, keep coming back. Oh, gee. And I went back to my meetings, and I went to meetings, and I just enjoyed Alcoholics Anonymous. And I stayed sober. I went to 701 meetings the first year I was sober. Some of us have to run faster than others. I didn't even know how many I'd gone to till the end of the year. And I got that first year cake, If Jim Ryan can stay sober for a year, anybody can stay sober. I only took birthday cakes at my regular meeting, so I only took 15. I was just like manure at a rodeo, man. I was everywhere. And I was just great. I just felt great. I walked into the 26th and Broadway Clubhouse in Santa Monica, and somebody said, "Hey, there's Jim Ryan. He went to 700 meetings his first year. Isn't that great?" And I didn't even know how many I'd gone to until I'd counted up at the end of the year on my calendar how many I'd gone to. And a man named Sam, an old-timer, came up to me and said, "Jim, I hear you went to a lot of meetings your first year." And I said, "Yeah, I did, 701, Sam." He said, "That's great." He said, "That's great. I'm glad you did that." He said, "But let me tell you something. Someday, somewhere, you're going to be standing on a lonely, cold, rainy, wind-swept corner, and there's not going to be a meeting to go to. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And I didn't like the way I felt when he walked away. The activity that I was willing to put in that first year of sobriety, 701 meetings, mopping these halls, emptying ashtrays, washing coffee cups, going anywhere I was asked to go, doing anything I was asked to do. I'm glad that I was willing to go through that kind of activity, because that kind of activity kept me sober. And then I found out something. There's a lot of difference between activity and action in Alcoholics Anonymous. In the action designed in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous for a program of recovery from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body was something I pushed aside. They were for you, not for me. I knew all of those truths, and I was willing to get around to them someday. And then I heard a man say something at Ohio Street, one of our meeting places in West Los Angeles. And I'd heard that man talk many times, but he said something that went through me like a bullet and changed my life. When he said, "Willingness without action is fantasy." And I said, yeah. I'd always been willing to be the fond father and the dutiful husband and the dues-paying, tax-paying citizen. But I took the action of staying on those damn bar stools to the point I couldn't say my own name without crying. I couldn't pay my bills, and I thought my life was over. Today I'm taking the action designed in those 12 steps just as they are so beautifully delineated by my friend Donna, and I'm telling you they've been the answer for me. They have been the answer for me from this relief from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous for only one reason. I could no longer stand to live one more day the way I was living, and I wanted to do something about it. And I have stayed in Alcoholics Anonymous without a drink since the first day I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous. Hasn't been that long, but a couple of months ago I celebrated my 11th consecutive birthday in Alcoholics Anonymous. And if that's all I ever get, I've had reward enough. But if you're new, or if there's anything shaky in your life, do not be discouraged. Get involved with the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you do, because it has happened to me, and it is my experience and other people's experience, you will know an inner peace, a quiet heart, if you will. You will know a God that you can understand. It will understand you. But above all, you will understand that gut-level knowledge that no matter what happens, so long as I stay sober the Alcoholics Anonymous way with these 12 steps, everything's going to be all right, baby. Everything is going to be all right. That's the great fact for people like us. I have seen people go through the tortures of the damned on this program. Death of a loved one, disease, divorce, and they've done it with dignity and they've done it with sobriety. And if they can do it, I can do it. If I can do it, you can do it, and we can do it. The overwhelming theme of Alcoholics Anonymous was described this morning at the meeting on unity. Together we can make it. Together we can do it. and together we will make it. And I'm telling you that overall feeling I never got. I always felt apart from all my life, and I've never felt a part of anything wherever I was, as a kid in Texas, as an athlete, as a Marine Corps officer, as a president of a corporation. I never felt a part of because I did everything my way. And I felt that way in Alcoholics Anonymous until I finally realized that I had to do things other people's way and God's way. And other people's way in Alcoholics Anonymous is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Pure and simple. Pure and simple. Do not be afraid to get involved with them. Get on with it. Take that action and go. And you will know what we speak about when we say come back to get the feeling of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know what it is. When I come to a roundup like this, especially one with the moon shining bright, and my people out there, I get this overwhelming feeling that I can actually feel, and it's magic. So if there's anything shaky in your life, come back for that magic. And let the feeling of Alcoholics Anonymous surround you. It has surrounded me and so many thousands of other people. I get that feeling every time I go to a meeting. I get that feeling every time in prayer and meditation, when I make those surrenders again. And I always get that feeling when I leave a 12-step call. The feeling of Alcoholics Anonymous. And today, as in every day lately, I've been able to get that feeling every morning when I can wake up and thank God for another day to be sober in. And that feeling to me is this. Life is now in session, baby. Come on board. Thank you for being here tonight.